and we're back for another episode of the Lakers Fast Break podcast. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here with Lakers Fast Break, Pop Culture Cosmos, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, and Game Source. We truly appreciate everyone out there listening to all of our shows, and if you can, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Plus, if you can like, share, subscribe, follow, or do anything that you can to support us right here at the Lakers Fast Break, Lakerholics.com, and the Hoopheads Podcast Network, it is sincerely appreciated. Well, you knew it wasn't going to be 2 games in a row against a team like that, especially with 3 of their 4 players coming back into the lineup, as the Jazz proved why they are a team to be reckoned with coming up in the playoffs. And hey, it is Albert Takero. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate the thumbs up. But unfortunately, the Lakers could not make it a back-to-back victory over the Jazz, and they fall in what was a game that was pretty much expected. The Lakers looked listless, flat. The energy wasn't there pretty much all game long. The Jazz went out to a 8-0 lead and never looked back, as they pretty much held off the Lakers. I think the lowest time I think they were closest was 5 point. There was a 5-point difference, but other than that, they really took care of the Lakers, especially in that third quarter where they pulled away with ease, and they end up winning against the Los Angeles Lakers 111-97. And here today to talk about the game a little bit, but more importantly, this is going to be a big week ahead for not only the Lakers, but also the NBA. And here today to talk about that and more is a good man indeed. You got to catch what he's doing today on his articles on medium.com. And, of course, Lakerholics.com. It is LakerTom. And LakerTom, again, we knew already that it wasn't going to be back-to-back. I would have liked a little bit more competitive fire up out of the team, but you see the difference with Gobert in the lineup for a team like the Lakers without LeBron and AD. It makes quite the difference.
Yeah, it's a shame because what happens is that Gobert's presence basically eliminates 3 of our best players, because you know that Drummond is not going to be able to score against Gobert underneath. And in fact, he wasn't able to even stop him on defense. Harrell becomes impossible to play at that point in time. And Dennis Schroeder's best moves basically are attacking the rim, and he can't do that with a rim protector in there. So it really nullifies the situation with the Lakers. I think when we get to playoffs, we're obviously going to meet the Jazz probably in the second round, at least if the standings stay the same as they are now. Basically, this is one of those teams. You know, Embiid is probably another situation where you just can't play Drummond. He's not going to be able to handle somebody that size defensively, and you just lose so much from the center position. These are the teams that why we really need Marc Gasol to be starting these games and playing well in the playoffs. And I'm hopeful that just like last year, we'll see those situational adjustments that Frank Vogel was so good in doing last year. Because frankly, the top 2 centers that we have this year, just like the top 2 centers we had last year, are going to be unplayable in a lot of games once we get into playoffs against certain teams.
But
and
I
that's,
also
that's a big handicap to come over.
I just said it is a big handicap. You're right, and I understand that. But you know, if the Lakers have a tendency, if they want to, in the playoffs, like they did last year in the playoffs, go 5 out, they can effectively put a wrench in the Jazz plans and get Gobert out of the game. Because you saw it today. Gobert does not like to go ahead and guard above the free throw line. He does not like to venture out there. And the Lakers go 5 out with Markieff Morris or someone else that can shoot the rock at the 5. That might be a difference for the Lakers in their favor, especially if AD is hitting.
They're going to have to do that. You know, I mean, it's a difficult situation because they have players who, while you can say that Gobert is a handicap in certain situations when teams have the ability to go 5 out and play small against them, it's only a one-sided affair. In this particular case, we have 2 players at center, in Drummond and in Harrell that basically get negated on both sides of the ball against the rim protector. They can't score, which takes away their game, and neither one of them is really an elite protector or elite defensive players. So the big question for the Lakers is going to be how much center is Anthony Davis willing to play? And
I'm sure he'll be able to play a lot like he did this past playoffs.
Or will we see? I'm not so sure, because first off, the Lakers haven't played him this year. It wasn't like last year where he played 25% of the time, even though we had Howard and McGee. This year, he's played less than 5% of the time.
Yeah,
at center, in addition to missing 34 games. And so when you combine those things and you look at the whole situation and the fact that we're overloaded with centers, because that they want to play Drummond, but he just becomes a negative factor against certain teams and certain lineups. He's fine against some teams, but also then even when you play him, and it may be different. It obviously will be different when you got LeBron and AD in there versus the players that we've got now surrounding Drummond. But at the same time, he clogs up the middle, and it seems that they've made such a commitment. They've basically promised him a starting position in order to get him to sign with the Lakers. And at least for the regular season, Frank, as usual, as Jamie says very well, he's not going to change his modus operandi. Hopefully he'll be able to do that in the playoffs, but this was a disappointing game all the way around. The Lakers didn't come out with a whole lot of fire. They shot very well from three to start the game. Horton Tucker had a good game from three. KCP looks like he's picked it up from three. Bad game from Morris, terrible game from Harrell.
Caruso.
A poor game from Caruso.
Oh, and I want to say this, LakerTom, if I see him do it again, this is something I've barked about before. If I see Caruso drive through the lane and go underneath the basket, and Joe Ingles, not the shot blocking deluxe individual that's out there, trailing him, and he doesn't even look to do a reverse layup, instead passes out, that to me is so irritating when you have these wide open layups. And I understand the mentality, but he's just so shy sometimes.
First option is to shoot. That's the number one rule in basketball.
It's so irritating.
Every time you go in there and with an idea that all you're going to do is pass, you are really limiting yourself offensively.
It's so irritating to watch. I mean, it goes against everything
I was taught. What irritates me about him is the cross-court passes in the middle of the lane that get picked off, and there's always one or two of them every game. This game, same thing. Yeah. He comes out and he fires a one-handed pass right straight through the 5 or 6 bodies. It was lucky if it even get through.
But THT, I mean, 24 points today. Pretty solid, pretty good. But it comes like I said, not too much. Kyle Kuzma chipping in 17, just not enough today. Just not enough.
No, and basically what we didn't have today is any defense.
Yeah.
I mean, we actually had a lead in 3-point shooting for most of the game until they started hitting them late. But you just can't leave Joe Ingles standing there out at the 3-point line. Agreed. They have too many shooters, and they play the ultimate drive and dish game. Everything is just drive and dish, over and over and over. Let's mix in a few pick and rolls right in the middle. And they got 3 shooters on the outside every time they run those pick and rolls. And Drummond is not a good pick and roll defender. Yeah. And he's not a finisher. I mean, he missed 2 lobs that were perfect lobs that he should have just dunked both balls. But it's, and I give Dre credit for playing within the confines of what the coaches want him to do and what he has to do to be a effective player on the Lakers. And, hopefully that will become much better with LeBron and AD, but I still worry about the matchups like the matchup tonight, where he becomes almost impotent inside to really be effective and score 3 for 12 from the field. And Harrell was 1 for 4 from the field. And you can attribute that almost 100% to Rudy Gobert's defense and how he changes the game. they couldn't outscore Gobert. Gobert outscored the two of them together. So it's just one of those situations where, we can't seem to. The bad news is we can't seem to win two in a row. The good news is at least we haven't been losing two in a row. So this is like the 10th game in a row. I think that we've alternated win, lose, win, lose, win, lose, win, lose. And listen, where we should end this podcast is actually the good news that Frank Vogel says there's a good chance that Anthony Davis will play Thursday. And I don't care whether it's on a minutes restriction or whatever. Yeah. It's exactly what we really need to get this team back. I'm sure he's going to be rusty. I'm sure he's going to be on a minutes restriction, but that's I think the best news that we've had today, when looking at the whole situation. I had hoped that we might be able to steal a win. The times I've watched the Jazz play numerous times this year, and I've seen them lose a couple of games. And the games that they lost were games when, live and die by the three. And all of a sudden, nobody can make threes. And every team runs through a stretch like that, and especially when you're as dependent upon the three-point shot as the Jazz are. But tonight wasn't that night, unfortunately. They didn't have the guy who killed us the other day. But they still got a horde of shooters, man. As Mark pointed out, they have not only the best offensive attack in making threes, but they also allow the least number of threes of opponent threes than anybody else in the league. That's a pretty good combination. It only amounted to 9 points tonight. But they beat us inside. We got out rebounded. We got outscored in points in the paint. We got out assisted. The one thing we did do is we took care of the ball pretty good. We had only 10 turnovers, which for the Lakers is exceptional ball control. But tough loss. We're now only a 1-game lead from staying out of the play-in tournament. And Anthony Davis is coming back hopefully Thursday. If not Thursday, maybe Saturday. So I'm keeping my hopes up that AD coming back will be an inspiration for us. I think he's done a terrific job of staying engaged, staying with the team, being involved in the discussions of the games, talking to other players, encouraging people, running around with his little iPad, pointing out things and doing his bit of coaching and so forth. So it's good to see that camaraderie on the bench. It was also not good to see the bench tonight was pretty listless. There wasn't many things that they could celebrate, not many great plays they could celebrate. So a tough loss. The Thursday and Saturday games are going to be really important. They get some time off. They get a practice in probably tomorrow or Wednesday. So that'll be a good opportunity and hopefully AD will be ready to go when we head to Dallas on Thursday.
Once again, the Lakers end up losing today, 111-97. The standings, I want to go ahead and correct you on this, Laker Tom, and that is as of right now, the Lakers are 2 games ahead of Portland Trailblazers in the standings.
1 game in the loss column.
Yeah, you look at the loss column, that's not what I look at. I look at 2 games overall as far as it's concerned. So 2 games overall as far as from the Portland. So I don't want to mislead the audience out there. It is 1 game in the loss column, but 2 games overall. They're 10 games back, Portland is, from Utah, whereas the Lakers are 8 games back. And then Dallas, which is in the play-in tournament right now, if it ended today, in 7th place, they're 4 games behind the Lakers, actually 12 games behind Utah. So right now they still got a little bit of breathing room, but if that's the case, if the Lakers lose 2 and the Mavericks win 2, that changes a lot. And that's something the Lakers have to focus on, at least splitting, at least taking care of a split this coming weekend. I know with AD coming back on Thursday, there is going to be a minutes restriction. I've heard the most likely rumor scenario is 15 to 20 minutes. Probably That's the most we can expect right now. So anything we get from that is greatly appreciated. But I think 15 to 20 minutes for starters is going to be okay. And that's what we're going to see from LeBron when he comes back. So I'm going to ask you this. How important is this series coming up in Dallas starting on Thursday? Because, again, the Lakers it is 4 games in the standings right now, but when you win 2 against the same team and you lose 2 against the same team, that makes a whole lot of difference.
Yeah, I know it's always a double counting game. You basically got a win for you and a loss for the other team. I think the games are critical, and I think that's one of the reasons why I really do expect AD to play on Thursday. This is not a game that if he's ready to play, you hear that excuse all the time from the coaches. If this were the playoffs, so-and-so would be playing. Well, as far as the Lakers are concerned, this is the playoffs. This is getting ready for the playoffs. This is a critical game. They can't, like you said, Gerald, they can't lose 2. They have to at least get a split. And I think there's a good opportunity, especially as erratic as the Mavs have been playing, the fact that they really don't have a defensive force inside. Porzingis will block a shot here and there, but he's not Rudy Gobert, or Miles Turner. So the Lakers should be able to see fairly good production from Drummond. They should be able to see their normal production from Harrell, and Schroeder should be able to get to the rim. Those are big differences for the Lakers right now without AD. It'll be interesting to see also watching AD play with Drummond and see whether or not how that works out. It's going to clog up the lane a little bit with him. Maybe Gasol will be available to play too, because there are going to be times when if you've got Porzingis is going to be playing outside. So that's not really where you want to have Drummond doing. So it'll be an interesting matchup. I think the Lakers are going to go into it as if this is the statement game that they need to do. This series is going to be critical for them. If they were to lose these 2 games, they would possibly be in danger of going into the play-in tournament, especially if it takes Anthony Davis, 5 or 6 games to just get his legs together and get his win back. So these are going to be critical games. Thursday night's going to be very important.
And we'll be here Thursday night after the game to cover it for you right here at the Lakers Fast Break. But before we head on out and before we talk about what great articles that you're doing at Lakerholics.com, one more important keynote, because there is a trial going on, and as we speak right now, the trial has headed to the jury, and they're actually sequestered overnight because they did not come to a decision in the Derek Chauvin trial in the Twin Cities area in Minnesota. So I want to hear your thoughts that the league is on standby in regards to whatever decision that's made, in regards to possible cancellations and suspensions of any games going forward if there's a decision made, because if it does not go the way that it, I believe it should, in that there should be a conviction because of the wrongdoing that was done, which is my own personal opinion. And I know, LakerTom, you've already expressed that as well, that, if it does go awry and we see a lot of backlash from it, that could lead to a suspension for several days for all these games.
Yeah, I'm hoping and praying that the jury will make the right decision. We'll listen to what the judge says about what the 3 charges are against them, and what the rule of law is related to those things. I think there's a possibility that we could see some justice, long overdue justice, for the killing of a black man by the police. And I think that I hope and pray that that's what we're going to see. I mean, we've seen some amazing things. We've seen the chief of police of Minneapolis and police officers from the city of Minneapolis
testify against.
Actually come out and break and actually support the fact that this was not something that they would have condoned, or that the deadly force was actually used.
Yeah.
So there's a great opportunity here. It's not just Derek Chauvin who's on trial. America's on trial, and the whole world is watching. Yep. And so I'm hopeful that there'll be peaceful ceremonies, peaceful protests, people happy and gleeful at the result that came out. Not that somebody was convicted of a crime, but the justice was done for George Floyd.
Yeah.
So if it comes out differently, which is entirely possible when you have 12 jurors. All it takes is one just to really interpret everything differently. If it comes out differently, boy, I feel sorry for the whole country. There's a big weight on those 12 jurors to see what they come up with and how they resolve this case. My wife was asking me when I thought I happen to think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a short jury deliberation. I think it's going to come out with a verdict tomorrow or Wednesday, and the verdict is going to be at least one of those charges, if not two or three of them, guilty. And then I think we're going to see, hopefully, that be a trigger to maybe seeing a change in how justice is administered in America for minorities.
I hope so, my friend. I hope so. I mean, we need to start healing as a country, as a nation, and start going on a better path. But we've said this now for a year, seemingly. So I'm hoping that we'll finally go ahead, wake up, and listen. And
if not this case, I don't see how. I mean, you cannot have a more clear-cut situation where everybody has seen the tape, everybody's seen the 9 minutes.
Yeah. You would think, but then again, we've seen otherwise, other examples about how justice has not prevailed and the right way of going about things has not worked out. So
yeah, well, listen, the police have done a great job testifying, and there hasn't been any blue wall that's been put up against that. The prosecutors have done a terrific job. There wasn't anything done there. I thought the jury selection has a fair. This is a city that has 17% minorities and 50% of the jurors, if you don't count the three alternates, are black or brown. So there's a good opportunity here for justice to prevail and for this to be an example for the rest of the country and all of the various other things that are happening, because things are out of control. And I wouldn't be surprised if the verdict doesn't come out well, that certain players in the NBA may not even want to play out of protest, and I could not say that wasn't.
You can't disagree with them.
Their right to be able to do that, because if this is not a clear-cut slam dunk prosecution of somebody doing something far wrong, that is murder. It's murder in some respect, and if it doesn't turn out to be if the case doesn't win, if the prosecutors don't win this case, I mean, there's no case that they could win. It comes down to that. So keep your fingers crossed, make your prayers and hopes, and America's on trial. And let's hope that those 12 jurors will make us proud.
Let's hope so, indeed. But once again, it is Laker Tom. You can catch him at LakerTom on Twitter. You can also catch his great articles every time out at medium.com and Lakerholics.com. But before we head on out, my friend, I wanted to go ahead and give you the platform, provided everything goes well and goes as you and I both hope, and that justice will be served, and we can continue the games in the NBA, and that the schedule does go as planned. What are you looking to go ahead and write about this week at Lakerholics.com?
Well, I've started looking at the minutes, basically, that everybody played in the playoffs last year on the Lakers, and the minutes that they've played this year, and trying to figure out how is Frank Vogel going to handle the minutes, because we're playing 11 guys almost 20 minutes. Now, some of that is because players have been out with injuries and COVID, situation, as well as other things. But it still comes down to the simple fact that last year we played 9 guys in the playoffs, and really around 8.5 when you add it up. And most championship teams generally like to play 8 or 9 players. We're playing 11 right now. So there's a big question of who's going to sit, because some guys are going to sit. Obviously they're going to start Drummond. So you can say, you can look at Schroeder, KCP, LeBron, AD, and Drummond as being 5 guys who are going to get time. And then for sure, you're going to see, obviously, Caruso, Morris, THT, and get their minutes. The big questions are, guys obviously that are on the borderline is what happens with Harrell. There are a lot of situations in the playoffs where Harrell is going to get minutes reduced, just like McGee and Howard did last year. And is Gasol going to get minutes? I am to think that Gasol and Drummond are going to split the minutes, and Harrell will be the guy left out, just because there are going to be too many teams that we need to spread the floor. So, at any rate, I played around with the minutes, and I actually added them up about a half an hour before the game started. I put down the number of minutes I thought everybody was going to play, the first 9 players, and it happened to come out magically to 240 exactly, which is 5 times 48 minutes. So it'll be interesting to see. That particular situation had Harrell getting 0 minutes. And frankly, it had Gasol getting 0 minutes because it was assuming that Anthony Davis was going to be playing quite a few minutes at center. Davis and LeBron both played 36 minutes last year, and I think they'll play 36 this year. So that's basically what I'm looking at. That article will probably be ready Tuesday or Wednesday. It'll be my prediction basically for who's in and who's out as far as the playoff and rotation.
We'll see what happens then. Again, check that out at LakerHolics.com. Be part of the conversation today at LakerHolics.com, or you can check out LakerTom's work on Twitter and, of course, Medium.com as well. And remember, we've got a ton of great basketball podcasts as part of the Hoopheads Podcast Network, hoopheadspod.com. Well, Laker Tom, unfortunately, it was not a great day today as we talk about what happens, but it was a split between the Jazz, which going in, I guess you could say, was something we would like because we were hoping they would get a split, and they did just that because they won on Saturday.
And it's our turn to win on Thursday.
Yeah, it's our turn to win on Thursday. Well, let's go see if we can win 2 in a row against the Mavericks. And
that'd be nice.
That would be nice indeed. But Laker Tom, unfortunately, it was a bad day for the Lakers and Lakers fans as they end up losing 111-97 to the Utah Jazz. We will be back on Thursday night after the game against the Dallas Mavericks. So please be here, join us, go ahead and be part of the action. Hopefully we'll have a spirited crew with us once again as the Lakers will face off against the Mavericks for a key pivotal position for a playoff spot. At least we'll be part of that equation. And of course, the most likely return of Anthony Davis. So we'll go ahead and talk about that and more coming up on Thursday. If everything goes well, and fingers are crossed that everything will stay on schedule and on course. And here's hoping everybody stays safe and stays healthy out there in Lakerland. And we'll see you Thursday right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.